Well, I have been a student of history, modern Indian history. So I do most of my work on modern Indian history, and which starts from 1707 with the death of Aurangzeb, and then there are different years for that kind of a markation. But I use 1707 as the starting of modern age. Uh, but my work primarily has been on the freedom struggle. So uh, Gandhi's Gandhi's movement and Gandhi-led national movement. So, but I also do anthropological work. I go into the fields. I go study different things, different streams of social sciences to work on like poverty issues and all kind of yeah. Well, this book is called George, The Life and Times of George Fernandes. It was it took 12 years for me to complete this work and published it. I started working in 2009 when I had a good fortune of meeting George, and he was already suffering from Alzheimer, so he didn't have much to say. I didn't really interview him, and he didn't say much to me. But he was aware of what I'm going to do and what I was seeking to do. So it was quite a good fortune for me that to receive his private paper collections. So all those private paper collections that he collected since 1959, okay, those papers were handed over to me, and I looked at the book's backbone. The spine it comes from the collected work, the private paper collections of George. But then no archive is complete by itself. You need to do more and more research and more go around. And I talked to some 200 people to get some kind of a understanding of the times that George lived and did his politics, and also to understand what he stood for, and also the events. These 200 people were sometimes in the course of his politics, they were either sometimes associated, sometimes estranged from him, but they gave me some kind of a kind of a backdrop to George's life, which was very helpful. So these 200 people whose interview I'm not really using much in the book, okay? I'm not using much in the book. I'm totally dependent on the documents. So one of it, of course, is George's own private paper collection. And then I went around in the trade union offices, trade union archives, National Archive, as well as Teen Murti Archive, which is in fact what we call NMML. This is a Nehru Memorial Museum library, which has repository of lots of politicians as well as important figures of the post-independence time. Their private paper collections are there. So which I looked at those papers. I looked at George's paper. I looked at the almost 50 to 60 years of newspapers to get an idea about the times that he was into, and also I did interview his colleagues, as I told you. So a combination of research took place, and so I was not totally dependent on George's private papers, but they were very important to me. I would not have done this book if I had not got that papers, because those papers in some way, we all know about politicians' life a little bit because they have been reported so widely in the newspapers. So to write about those things would be rehashing what is already there, right? So you want to go a little deeper, and you want to go a little, you want to draw insights out of some unseen papers, right? In one of the files that I got, a handwritten diary that he was maintaining while he was in Tihar jail during 1975-77 emergency period, and he wrote those handwritten papers, those diary, and that diary was never published. So it was almost just like that, it was there, and which I was very fortunate to get that kind of unseen papers to write about and to build my story out of it. There were also letters that his closest family members they wrote, and he wrote to them from the jail. And one of the strangest thing about in 1963, when he was in full 1 year in the jail in Nagpur and other places, they had he used to write letters to his family members, and the strange thing was that he was keeping a kind of a copy of those letters, once again handwritten, not exactly the copying that, but he was rewriting it in his notebook. And so you had access to what he wrote to the people, and then again the letters which he received, you had also knowledge of that. Yeah, these papers were almost like 2 lakh loose papers, and written in different shapes and sizes of paper. I found even his writings on the envelopes of the letters that he received, and many people from his constituency, they wrote letters to him, and those letters were either asking for something, or they were intimating him about the constituency problems, and those letters he kept in the files. And some of those letters he acted upon, like sending it to the ministries concerned and all. Otherwise, those letters also complained about him not visiting or things like that. So it also, I think the George papers that I received were extremely important ingredient in deciphering the modern Indian politics that we have today. Well, I just had completed my Gandhi's Khadi, which is a history of Gandhi's Khadi movement. This book was published in 2008, and it is, as the name denotes, it was mostly about the freedom struggle. Now, I wanted to go beyond the freedom struggle and look at the post-independence time, and I was looking for a subject to deal with, and I found that biography could be one method to look at one person, and through that person look at the whole country, and George came from Mangalore, and then he went to Bombay, and from Bombay he went to Bihar. So it was almost traversing the whole country, and so here is a man who was truly national in that sense, because he was not really coming from one region, and he spoke multiple languages. Because of he coming from the west coast, and the coastal people have benefits of different languages, so he almost knew with his birth 5 languages. He knew Tulu, he knew Konkani, he knew Kannada, he knew English, he in Hindi, and because he was also trained as a priest in St. Paul seminary here, whereby he learned Latin a bit. So his language was extremely strong in that sense, and he was having command over Marathi, a little bit of Gujarati as well, and Hindi, of course. He was working in Bihar and other places. So in some sense, I really George became some kind of a mirror to look at the whole country's politics, and I think it was a fetching. It was a good idea to look at George's biography, to know a gamut of issues, and also get introduced to many regions. I would not have known about Mangalore the way I came to know while doing research on George. So I have a feeling that it was a good choice, although it took a lot of my time. 12 years I spent on this, but it was worth it. I don't know if other subjects would have fetched me that kind of span to know about this country. Yeah, so it was self-learning. Yeah. I really wanted to tell a story of George in a readable format. I just wanted to make people read his story and his struggles. We have prime ministers coming from, also from the grassroots. We do have but the kind of man George was, he truly grew out of grassroots. He really came out of of something whereby he didn't have any pedigree like the Gandhi family in the country today has, or he didn't have any big, he didn't belong to Hindu religion, or he didn't really talk Hindi for that matter. Konkani is spoken by a small number of the people, and then therefore, so these are the tropes on which the politics functions in this country. You need to belong to majority religion, you need to belong to the majority linguistic group, you need to belong to a majority region like Uttar Pradesh. Most of the prime ministers have come from that area. So he really grew out of grassroots, and so so I really wanted to tell this story to the rest of the people, because he never became prime minister, so maybe he would have been forgotten, by many people. So I wanted to identify with his struggle, and I wanted to present a story of him to the young people as well as to the for general reading. Biography, I feel, is a tool to tell a story. History is a discipline which is entirely different from this, but biography is something which should be which should be read for a story, and that's what I was trying to do. And I think the response is good to the book, and so I think it was worth doing it. And yeah,